Ispahsalar. Ispahsalar Persian, SPHSLR or Sipahsalar SPHSLR, Army Commander, in Arabic rendered as Isfahsalār SFHSLR or Ispahsalar SPHSLR, was a title used in much of the Islamic world during the 10th–15th centuries to denote the senior-most military commanders, but also as a generic general officer rank. Islamic East and Persia. The title derives from Middle Persian sipahsālār, already attested in Persian texts of the 9th century. It was the equivalent of the Old Sasanian title of Spabed, New Persian Ispabed, which during the Islamic era fell out of general use and became a regnal title among certain local dynasties in Tabaristan and Khurasan. The titles of Ispahsalār and Sipahsalār came into prominence in the Islamic world in the later 10th century, with the rise to power of Iranian dynasties during the so-called Iranian Intermezzo. In its sense of commander-in-chief, the title was used in parallel to the usual Arabic titles Hajib al-Hajjab Hjb al-Hjb, Hajib al-Kabir Hjb al-Kabir, or Sahib al-Jaysh Shb al-Jaysh. Among the Buyids, it was given as a sign of conciliation as well as of particular honor to two rebellious Turkish generals, Sebektigin al-Mizi in 971, and, after his death, Alptekin in 974/5. With the growing instability of the Buyid states towards the end of the century, the usage of Ispahsalār became debased, and it came to mean simply commander or just officer. Among the later Safarid dynasty under Caliph Ibn Ahmad reigned 963–1002, the title was applied to the commander-in-chief of the army, while the Hajib al-Hajjab was a separate office, possibly commanding the slave troops Mamalik, Gilman. Among the Turkic dynasties, the Arabic and Persian titles were supplemented by the Turkish title Savashi. The Ghaznavids employed Sipahsalār and its Arabic equivalents in its original sense of commander-in-chief, but also for commanders of specific contingents of their army, alongside the use of plain Salār and in Arabic, Hajib for less exalted generals. The Seljuk Empire and the Sultanate of Rum used a number of variants of the title, such as Ispahsalār I Buzurg SPHSLR BZRG or Amir I Ispahsalār Ma SPHSLR, as well as a variety of other Arabic, Persian, and Turkish titles, both in a technical sense for the commander-in-chief of the army as well as the governors and army commanders of important regions. The title was also used by the Khwarezmijas, originally Seljuk vassals, who employed a unique variant, Kur Ispahsalār SFHSLR, for commanders of frontier regions. The Mongol conquests diminished the use of the title, bringing to the fore Turkish and Mongol ones instead, but it remained in widespread use in the isolated and conservative regions of Gilan and Daylem on the Caspian shore. In Persia proper, it was revived by the Safavids under Shah Abbas Ir 1587–1629, replacing the Arabic title Amir al-Umari used until then. The office was apparently usually held by the Beglerbegi of Azerbaijan, with Rustam Khan the most prominent person to occupy it. The post was abolished again in 1664/77, after which a commander-in-chief Sardar was appointed only in wartime. The title reappeared in the form Sipahsalār Iyazm SPHSLR ZM under the late Qajar dynasty, being held as an honorific by Minister of War Mirza Mohammad Khan Qajar in 1858, the reformist Minister of War, and soon after Chief Minister Mirza Hussein Khan Qazwini, who also built the namesake Sipahsālār Mosque in Tehran in 1860. Use in the Caucasus and the Mashriq. Buyid and especially Seljuk influence led to the spread of Ispahsalār, alongside other Persian titles, westwards to the Mashriq and even the Christian countries of the Caucasus. In Armenian it became Ispahsālār, and in Georgian Ispahsalāri, one of the four great ministers of state of the Georgian realm. The title was also in common use among the Turkic Atabid dynasties of Syria and Iraq. In Fatimid Egypt, the Isfahsalār was the commander-in-chief of the army and jointly responsible with the head chamberlain Sahib al-Bab, Shb al-Bibi, or Wazir al-Saghir, Arabic, Ws of el-Isja for military organization. The title survived among the Mamluks of Egypt, where both Isfahsalār and the Nisba al-Isfahsalāri al-Isfahsalār were commonly used in the titulature of the senior commanders in the 13th century, but it seems to have been debased and fallen out of use thereafter. It is still attested as late as 1475 for a Mamluk commander-in-chief, but by this time the term isfahsalār was also applied generally to the guards of the Mamluk Sultan. Among the Ottomans, sipahsālār isfahsalār continued to be used, but in a generic sense, the usual terms for commander-in-chief being Serdar Srdr and Sir Askar Srdr. Muslim India. From the Ghaznavids, the title also passed to the Ghurid dynasty, rulers of Afghanistan and northern India. Under the Ghurids, Isfahsalār signified the commander-in-chief, but in the 13th century it denoted an officer in command of 100 cavalry, and under the Tughlūkids it declined to signify the commander of 10 men. Aside from this technical meaning, the term continued to be used in the Muslim states of India in the 14th–15th centuries as a generic term for general officer, e.g. under the Lodi dynasty, or as commander-in-chief, e.g. in the Bengal Sultanate or the Deccan Sultanates. Under the Mughals, it was a title sometimes given to the Khan and Khan of Khans, the Mughal commander-in-chief, especially when he led the army in place of the Mughal emperor.